In today's tutorial, I want to walk you through how you can achieve an awesome testimonial carousel using the auto layouts in 7.1. So this is the final result that we're going to be achieving. You can see how I have the client testimonial on the left side and I have the client source down here with a couple of little details that make this look a little bit more editorial or just different from a regular Squarespace template. And then here we have the thumbnail that accompanies the testimonial on the right side. So let's go ahead and jump into 7.1 to make this happen. So first of all, I'm going to walk you through all of the different settings that I'm using just in case that you want to replicate the exact look that I'm going to be achieving. So here you can see how I have a fairly large image, and then here I have the content for my testimonial. So these are the settings that I'm working with right now. You can see how in the design tab, I have chosen the carousel layout. So this customization is going to be specific for the carousel auto layout, again, just in 7.1. And then I have my text aligned to the left side. I have a maximum column limit of 1. I have my image crop set to 1:1, so completely square. I have the infinite scroll enabled, but the show adjacent slides disabled. And then here for the style, I have custom sizes for the different text inside my testimonial. I have the entire thing set as a card with a padding of 0 across all of the edges. And then for the navigation, I have the arrows set here at the bottom and to the left side of the carousel, and I have the space above the navigation set to 0. Going back, we have for size and space that the layout width I'm working with is the inset because I don't want it to take up all of the space that I have on the page. I have the media width set to large, the content width set to medium. And for this particular customization, I would recommend sticking with either the small or the medium content width because this is going to give us enough room to be able to place those quotes sort of offset from where the content starts. So I definitely recommend working with one of these type of width or these width options if you're going to achieve this customization, but in the end, it's all up to you. Then for the content placement, I have everything set to the center. For the space between the elements, I have this set to medium. For the space between slides and the vertical padding, I have both things set to small. And for the position of the content, I have it set to the center. Then looking back into the content area or where you add the content for the carousel, I don't have anything specific in here. I just have the thumbnail added up here. I have a title up here, and then I have a little bit of a description. And then what I'm doing is I'm using the button text or the actual button of the carousel as the name of the client. So we're actually going to be disabling the click-through that this button has so that it only showcases the client name and people can't really interact with that. Then for the elements, I just have the image, the title, the body, and the button showing, and I don't have anything else showing inside the section. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and go in my custom CSS window. And the first thing that we're going to be taking care of is setting these things side by side. So let's go ahead and take a look at how the structure of these slides is built so that we can see how we can make things sit next to each other. So if we take a look here, we're going to see the entire container that is holding all of the slides inside our carousel. And then if we open this up, we're going to see that we have one slide here and then the other slide down here. So these are LI elements. And then if I open this LI element that we see here, we're going to see that inside it, so inside each of these slides, we have two containers. We have the first one that is holding the thumbnail image, and then we have the second one that is holding all of the content for the slide. So the container that is holding both things, we can see that this one has been set to flex by Squarespace. So you can see that because there's going to be a little batch here next to the container that has been set as a flex container if you're using one of the latest versions of Chrome, or if you're using some of the browsers, you might also see that little batch. If not, you can see that in the right side of the inspect element window where it says here display, you're going to see that this has been set to display flex. So this actually gives us an advantage in terms of how we can set things side by side very easily. So because the container has been set to flex, what we can do is use one property that is called flex direction to be able to change the way that things are sitting right now within that container. So you're going to see that if we take a look at some of the other declarations that we have on this same container, the flex direction has already been specified as column. So this is what's making things stack right now inside our carousel. What we're going to do is we're going to target that same container that is already carrying that flex direction of a column, and we're going to overwrite that and set it to row. So row is just going to set things side by side instead of stacked the way they are right now. So I'm going to be reusing this same selector that Squarespace used to set that flex direction to column in the beginning, because this one is not only targeting my target container, so the one that I want to modify at the moment, but it's also indicating the type of auto layout that I'm working with. So this is going to help me make sure that I'm not going to be modifying any other auto layout inside my site. So I'm going to go ahead and use this, and I'm going to paste that inside my custom CSS window, and then I'm going to set the flex direction to row. So once I do that, you're gonna see how everything just switched, and now we have things set horizontally. So we have the text on the right side and we have the thumbnail on the left side. However, I want to have the text on the left side instead. So what I'm gonna do, instead of using row, I'm going to be using row reverse. And what this is going to do is just flip things over. So I have my image on the right side and I have my content on the left side. So I'm going to go ahead and modify this here. And just like that, you're gonna see how we have things much more similar to how we have them in the final result. Now, the next thing that we're going to be taking care of is centering this content that we have here. So right now we have it at the top of the thumbnail, but I actually want it to sit in the middle of the thumbnail. Now, because we already know that the slide is using Flexbox to be able to modify and organize the things inside it, so the thumbnail side and the content side, we're going to rely on one of those Flexbox properties to be able to put this inside the center and align both things through their middle. So what we're going to do is we're going to target that same container from before. So again, the one that's holding both sides. And we're going to be using the property called align items and centering everything. So align items, and we're going to set this to the center. And just like that, you're going to see how everything is just aligned through their middle. So awesome. We're getting close to our final result. Now let's go ahead and take care of this spacing that we have here, because I actually want my button to be closer to where the text starts. So let's take a look and see what's causing that space so that we're able to remove it. If we take a look at the element that we're standing on, we're going to see that it has some padding on it. So what we can do is target this same container to be able to remove the padding to either just the left side or along all of the edges of the container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of these classes that we have here. We have list item content button, SQS block button element, and SQS block button element medium. So I'm going to be grabbing list item comment button. So I'm going to grab this in here, and I'm going to put that inside my custom CSS window. Now this class selector that we're using doesn't really tell us a lot about if we're using an auto layout carousel or anything else. So I feel like if I just stick with this selector, I'm going to be modifying other buttons that I don't really want to touch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back inside the inspect element tool and look for a parent container or an ancestor container of this particular button to see if I can find another class that makes things a little bit more specific about the auto layout that I'm using right now. So let's go ahead and take a look at the inspect element tool here. So here we have our button, and then taking a look at the different parent elements that we have here, we have this one. It doesn't really have a class that indicates anything about a carousel. Then we have this one, nothing there. This one is not a parent, so we're going to skip it. And this one doesn't have anything about a carousel, so it doesn't work. This one is not a parent, so we can skip it. And then here we have user items list carousel slide. All right, awesome. So this one looks a lot more specific for the type of auto layout that we're using. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this class, and I'm going to add it into my selector list. So I'm going to place this before my previous selector. And now that we have this in place, I'm going to go ahead and remove the padding. So I don't really care for keeping the padding across all the other edges of the container, so I just want to remove it entirely. So I'm going to be setting this to padding 0. And once I do that, you're going to see how I don't have any padding anymore. In fact, if we take a look here on our element again, you're going to see how there's no padding left, so we're good to go. Now, since we're already standing on the button, I'm going to go ahead and disable the click-through right away just so I don't forget it. So right now, you're going to see that if I send over the client's name, I can go through a particular link that I have within that button in my slide. Now, I don't want this to happen with any link or any of the buttons of this carousel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to pointer events none. And what this is going to do is it's going to stop the button from being interactive. So you're not really going to be able to click on it. So here you can see that if I try to click on the button, it's not going to lead me anywhere. It's just going to allow me to move the slide as it normally does, but I'm not going to be able to click through the link inside the button because I don't really want it to be a button anymore. So let's go ahead and move on to the little details that we have in our testimonial. So I'm first going to start with the curly quotes that we have up here that look like this and the final result. So this is just a quote icon image that I uploaded to Squarespace, and we're going to be adding that as a background image for the container that is holding our testimonial. So let's go ahead and take a look at our inspect element tool, and let's look for the container that is holding that testimonial content. So if we look here inside our slide, we're gonna see that this first container is holding all of the thumbnail that we have on the right side, and this other container, let me close this. This other container is holding the content side of the slide. So this is the one that we're going to be targeting to be able to add those curly quotes. So I'm going to be using this class over here to point to my target container. Now, once again, because this class selector doesn't really tell me anything about the type of auto layout that I'm working with, I want to make sure that it includes something that tells my browser that I want this modification to happen only for the carousel auto layout. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the same parent container class from before. So this one that indicates that we're talking about a carousel slide. And I'm going to add that inside my new selector. So this way I'm going to be able to target the list item content container that is sitting inside the user items list carousel slide container, just to make sure that I'm not going to be modifying any other type of auto layout across the site. So let's go ahead and add our background image. So the way that we're going to be doing this is by using literally the background image property. And I'm going to be setting this to a URL, and I already have my image in here. So it's this one here. So now I have the curly quotes added to the entire container. Now, of course, this is not the way I want it to look like. So let's go ahead and modify this slightly. First, I'm going to go ahead and set background repeat to no repeat because I just want to show the curly quote once. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a size. So let's go ahead and set this to about like 50 pixels maybe. All right, I think that looks pretty good. And I believe that was the value that I used in the beginning, so it's all good. Now, because the default alignment or the default placement for background images is the top left corner, and I want it there, I'm not really going to be using the background position property to be able to move the quotes around. If you want to place your icon or anything elsewhere inside this container, remember that we're limited by the container itself, so you can only place that background image within these blue boundaries that you see here. And right now we have ours inside the top left corner of this entire container. So if you want to move that around, if you want to have it in the bottom right corner, or if you want to have it, this is the left corner, but if you want to place it anywhere else inside this container, then you can use the background position property and then set your specific coordinates, or just use the keywords like top left, top right, anything like that to be able to move your image around. All right, so we're pretty much done with the quotes. Now let's go ahead and move on to the little line that we're going to have before our client's name. So to be able to add that line, we're going to be creating a pseudo element, and we're going to be attaching it to the button container. So we already targeted that container before. It's this one here that has the class of list item content button. And then to this selector, we also added the user items list carousel slide selector to make sure that we're only making this modification for the carousel auto layout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reuse this exact same selector and I'm going to attach the pseudo element to it. So let's go ahead and grab this, put it lower down inside our custom CSS window. And because I want the line to sit before my client's name, I'm going to be attaching a before pseudo element. So I'm going to add here my before. And then the first thing that we need to do is add the content property. So I'm going to be setting this to an empty container. So I'm going to give this a height and a width that I want my line to have. And then I'm going to be using a background color to be able to turn that container, that slim container, into a line. So let's go ahead and set the height of this to, how about like 2 pixels maybe? For the width, I'm going to set this to about 80 pixels. And then let's go ahead and set this to display inline block because I want it to sit next to my client's name. So I'm going to set this to inline block. There you go. You're going to see that space that we're creating with the empty container because we have a width of 80 pixels over here. And now to be able to actually see the line, we're going to add here a background color and I'm going to set this to black. So just like that, we have the line before our client's name. Let's go ahead and tweak this a little bit because right now it's looking a little bit off. First of all, I'm going to add a margin to the right side of the line to be able to create some space between the edge of it and the start of my client's name. So let's go ahead and do here margin right, and let's set this to like 10 pixels. All right, so that spacing looks pretty good. Now, I don't want the line to be aligned with like the baseline of my text. I want it to be aligned to the middle of my text. So because I'm working with an inline block element, I'm going to be using the vertical align property, vertical align, and I'm going to set this to the middle. So once I do that, you're going to see how everything is going to shift and everything is going to be aligned through the middle. Okay, awesome. We're almost there. Now let's go ahead and push this, or actually pull this to the left side. So the way that we're going to be doing this is with a negative margin to the left side. So let's go ahead and add this up here, margin left. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to sort of override the width plus the margin that I already have in place because I want to try to make the beginning of the S of my client's name here align with the beginning of the testimonial text. So I'm going to set this to minus 90 pixels, and I think that actually looks really good. All right, so let's go ahead and leave it like this and check out mobile because I think we're almost done. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and save this, and I'm going to open this up. All right, this looks really good. Ooh, that looks pretty. Let's shrink this down. Okay, this looks pretty good. However, there's something we need to take care of here. Okay, 2 things actually. First of all, I don't know if you can notice, but we have this little line showing up over here. So because we're using that negative margin to the left side, if there's not enough room with like padding on the sides of the site or anything like that to be able to fit the line, or to be able to fit the entire width of the line that we have here, we're going to see that it's going to be sort of overflowing into the previous slide, which is what's happening right now. And so this line is actually coming from the next slide. So to be able to avoid all of these issues without having to like calculate how many pixels we're going to set this and like create media queries to be able to move the line and stuff like that, all we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the entire slide does not allow any overflow. So let's go ahead and take a quick look here. And we're going to look for the actual slide. So what I don't want is for this line at any point to be visible beyond the boundaries that I have here for my slide and for any of the other slides, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be targeting this user items list carousel slide, which I actually think we already targeted. Did we already target that? Yeah, here we have user items list carousel slide. So I'm going to apply here an overflow of hidden. And by doing that, if the line happens not to fit because the margin to the left is pulling it too much to the left side, that it's overflowing into the previous slide, we're not going to see that overflow anyway, so it's all going to be good. Let me shrink this down again just to make sure. I think it was about this side, this size. Yeah. Okay, so right now you can see how we don't have any lines in there. Nothing is happening, so we're all good. Now, the last thing that we need to do here is actually create a MIDI query so that everything stacks on mobile. Because this looks good side by side up to a point, but I feel like if we go all the way down to mobile here, that's not looking too good. I feel like this would look a lot better being back in a column. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the same container from before. So this is the entire slide holding both things, the one that we changed the direction to in the beginning to be able to set things side by side. So I'm going to be retargeting this same container and change its direction again on mobile screens. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to put that here at the bottom, media screen, and here you can basically choose when you want the stacking to happen. I feel like I want this to happen at, let's use 7.1, so breakpoint, and see how that looks like. All right, so I'm going to set the flex direction here to column. Perfect. All right, so now we have everything looking amazing on mobile. Let's go ahead and stretch this out a little bit just to check how things are going to look like on tablets. If you have a lot of text, you may want to stack things sooner, but let me take a look and see what this looks like at this point. I feel like side by side still looks good here. Yeah, and then it stacks. All right, awesome. I don't think I want to make any more modifications to this. I think we're good to go. Let me just put this back and save this. All right, and we're officially done. So there you have it. This is how you can create a lovely testimonial carousel using the auto layout carousel in 7.1.